Before your favorite toy figurines land on the shelves of Walmart and Toys R Us, they have already lived an entire lifetime. Have you ever wondered what gives them their life-like quality? From conception to execution, manufacturing toy figurines is a highly complex process that requires expert craftsmanship. Curious to learn more? Well, stick around until the end of the video then to discover how toy figurines are made from scratch. The first step in the manufacturing process entails designing the figurine. Once the character has been selected, the design team will begin the actual design process with sketches of the proposed figure. These rough sketches are revised and improved until a final design has been selected. Now, it's time to move on to prototyping. After the designing process, the next step is the creation of a clay prototype. Bending aluminum wires will create this prototype and form the backbone of the figurine. This is also known as an armature. The metal wire form includes the rough outline of the arms and legs set in the general stance that the figurine will later assume. Once the armature is to the liking, the sculptor will add clay to provide it with the desired weight and shape. Afterward, the clay may be partially baked during the prototyping process in order to harden it. Now comes the tricky part. With the help of various sculpting tools, such as a wire loop, the sculptor will carve the solidified clay and shape every detail on the figure. Once the basic form has been created, the sculptor can remove the arms, work on them, and attach them later separately. You might wonder why that is. The reason behind removing the figure's limbs is that it gives the sculptor more control and allows them to create finer details on the prototype. At this stage, the sculptor shapes the body with blunt tools to provide as much detail as is desired. Photos and sketch references are used to ensure the figure is as realistic as possible during the refining process. In fact, some sculptors even chose to use human models to guide these intricate designs and achieve maximum accuracy. After the general body shape of the toy figurine is complete, the sculptor moves on to add finer details. The nose, eyes, and mouth are granted special attention because these features give the figure its lifelike expression. In addition to that, the designer may attach a rough lump of clay to the figure to serve as a temporary head, while the real head will be sculpted on a separate armature. This actually allows the sculptor to work on the toy's facial expressions independently of its main body and make them more refined. After the figure's head is attached to the rest of its body, the neck and hair are sculpted to fit correctly into the figure. Now comes the exciting part. If the company manufactures action figures, they will sculpt the costume directly onto the body, depending on the figure's design, of course. However, if they want to add a cloth costume or uniform later, the prototype will be sculpted without any costume details. Now, once the figure is completed, the sculpted prototype is sent for approval to the manufacturer. After finalizing all the design details, the manufacturer will use the prototype to make the molds. Later in the process, these molds form the plastic pieces for the mass-produced toy figure. Now, let's take a look at how the prototype is transformed into the real thing. While the prototype is made from simple modeling clay, aluminum wire, and various sculpting tools, the actual figure requires different raw materials. The toy figurine is molded from a plastic resin, such as acrylonitrile butadiene styrene, or ABS plastic. The main body of the toy is made from this hard plastic. Similarly, smaller accessories and costume pieces are molded from softer plastics, like polypropylene and polyethylene. In addition, costume components such as bodysuits, capes, and face masks are added to the figure with the help of various fabrics, such as rayon and nylon. Finally, acrylic paints of different colors may be used to decorate the figure. In this step, a master mold or even a series of multiple molds are made from the finished clay prototype. These molds are used to mass produce the finished parts for the figure. Interestingly enough, nearly 2/3 of the time required to make a toy figurine is involved in creating and operating the molds. The patterns based on the prototype are created for each and every individual piece, and then they're sent out for assembly line production. Some figures are easy enough to mold from a single piece of plastic and contain a wire skeleton, allowing for limited movement. In contrast, toy figurines with greater articulation require that each movable part is molded as a separate component. The next step is molding the plastic parts components. Several molding processes can be used to mold these parts. For example, Hasbro initially considered using a rotational molding process that would impart its Star Wars figures a smooth, seamless look. However, this process was unacceptable because the larger size of the pieces caused them to lose some detail. Moreover, rotational molding is problematic because it is a slower process and therefore much more expensive for the toy manufacturer. In order to avoid the hassle of slow and inefficient molding, Hasbro elected to use an injection molding process. This process entails pumping molten plastic into a two-piece mold. Next, pressure is applied to hold the mold together, allowing the plastic to cool down and eventually harden. Afterward, the mold is opened and the plastic component is ejected. Each piece of the figure is made in this fashion during the molding process to save time and preserve the details. After the individual plastic components of the toy figurine have been molded, it's time to assemble them together to form the finished figures. Now, rather than using regular glue, toy manufacturers use an ultrasonic sealing method that uses high-frequency vibrations to fuse all the plastic components together. What's a toy figurine without some eye-catching, intricate details? Manufacturers add the finishing details near the end of the process and ensure that everything is in pristine condition. A figure may be molded entirely from plastic, or its costume or clothing may be made of fabric and attached to the body in a separate process. For instance, as in the movies, Hasbro makes action figure costumes from the actual fabric. In their Star Wars figurine series, Admiral Akbar has a vinyl belt insignia, while the character Boba Fett also dons a canvas-like cape. These pieces are created separately from the main figure and added after the sculpture is complete. At this stage, the company will also perform a quality check. As the molds are created and tested at the production sites, the samples are routinely sent back to the manufacturer for approval. Additionally, the quality of the toys is checked through a series of stringent safety tests to ensure that the toy figurines are safe for small children and that they won't fall apart during playtime. The last step is packing and shipping the toy. While the figure is being sculpted, molded, and accessorized, the packaging is also being designed. For toy figurines, the package generally consists of a box with a clear plastic window or a cardboard backing covered with a plastic blister shell. Once the package design is completed, the packages are mass-produced and sent to the production facility where the toys are manufactured. Next, the figurines are inserted into the package, which is then firmly glued or taped shut. Finally, the finished units are packed in shipping cases to be distributed to various retailers. That's all for today, folks. Click on one of the two videos on your screen right now, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.